Hey Josh, so wanted to share with you my warm-up routine that I do because I think it's really, being consistent with this has really helped with my sciatica and pretty much pain-free now. In some ways I'm stronger than I was before I had my bad 3 months there earlier this year. So I'm gonna kind of flow through some different stuff and I'll talk through what I'm doing. With all of this, try to work within your pain-free range of motion. So if, like when I do like a cobra pose, if you hit a certain point and you start to feel that pain or you feel like it's impacting your sciatica, dial it back. You wanna do these exercises as much as you can, just within that range of motion where there's no pain. And then gradually, as you get some mobility back, as you build some strength, you'll be able to increase that range of motion and to where you're not feeling pain where you were before. So I'm gonna get right to it. This is kind of how I start all my workouts. And even on days when I don't do my long workouts, I'll be sure to go through this at least in the morning or in the evening. It just kind of helps keep the joints nice and lubricated, that sort of thing. But typically I start on all fours. Now through everything that I'm gonna do here, one thing is consistent, or you want to keep one thing in mind, and that is keeping the belly button drawn in towards the spine. Okay, so that's going to help support that lower back, helps engage those lower abdominals. Over time, that'll become a little bit just instinctual. You'll always kind of have that drawn in right here. But as I go through everything here, that's one thing that's going to be consistent. So I just got to the dojo, so I haven't even started moving yet. So one of the first things I do is I want to make sure those elbows are rolled under, okay? So that if you were to bend your arms, the elbows go backwards. And I'm just going to kind of start with some forward and backward movement here. And this is not passive movement. So as I go forward and I go back, I'm actively engaging my glutes, my inner thighs, almost to try to pull my hips back and then push them forward. But this is a slow, controlled movement. And again, if this causes you pain wherever in your back, low back, flares up the sciatica, then you don't have to go as deep as I'm going. When I first started doing this, my movement kind of looked like this, just a little bit, and then gradually I was able to kind of get back to where I had this full range of motion, forward and back. From here, I'm going to start to just kind of take these into some circles in one direction, and I don't really work in like sets, right? I kind of just go with what my body's feeling. So I might do 5, 8, 10 on one side and then the other, just sort of whatever I feel like I need. Okay. Coming around, again, this is not passive. So as I go forward, I'm actively trying to push with the back, with that posterior chain, side to side. Okay. From there, I'll extend one leg, and again, keeping all of this good and active, I'm just going to kind of give this some rocks just to help wake up my hamstrings. Not very many. A few rocks here. Now I'm going to start sort of mobilizing the low back. So for me, with my sciatica, a big cause of that, or something that was contributing to it, was I had a very tight low back. Despite 10 years of yoga, my physical therapist said, despite 10 years of yoga, your low back mobility sucks. So that's really been a lot of my focus. So again, keeping that belly button drawn in towards the spine, I'm going to take an inhale, look up. Exhale, arch the back. Inhale up. Exhale, arch the back. And again, only go as deep or as far as it stays, pain-free for you. So, you might be just sort of right here and not necessarily taking these as deep as I am. As I'm arching the back here, I'm thinking about, again, pulling that belly button in towards the spine, and I'm initiating everything from the pelvis here and then rolling it under. So I'll do a handful of those there. And then from there, I'm going to come down to my elbows, all right? And this is really where we're going to start to wake up that low back a bit. So you might feel terrible right here, depending on what your mobility is and where your pain threshold is. This might feel really bad. So you can kind of take those elbows a little bit further if you need to lay, a little flatter. Key things here, keep the low back relaxed, keep the glutes relaxed. Even just sitting right here, breathing, this will help loosen up that low back. Gradually, you might start to walk those elbows back a little bit more, okay, so where you're here, getting eventually to where you can get those elbows underneath your shoulders. And then from here, you can kind of just start some slow upward, looking up to where the ceiling meets the wall, upward and downwards movement here, okay? If you're there, maybe you're using your hands, take yourself a little higher. And again, you build up to this, all right? So it might take you a while to get to here, depending on how bad your pain is. This took me a long time. Eventually, you're gonna get to where you're kind of able to do that full cobra, okay? But again, keeping that low spine or lower back relaxed here. So I used to have a bad habit of really keeping a lot of tension in my low back. And that was not helping my sciatica. Here. Pushing up. Then after I've done a few of those, I might push those hips back just to lengthen the spine. From there, I'm gonna take my right leg out to the side, really keeping this side engaged, keeping the glutes engaged. I'm just gonna start initiating this forward and back movement, keeping a bit of lordosis in the spine, so that natural curve here. Switch to the other side. Still just waking up my hips. Bring that back. Next, I'm going to go into a hip airplane. Again, like with all this, just work with what you can work with. So I'm going to extend that right leg here, keeping the hips parallel to start, and imagining I'm pushing this knee into the mat. I'm going to lift that hip open and control close. Open and down. Open and down. If this is easy for you, you can work on taking that arm up, or doing something where you're challenging your balance a little more. All that is just going to further strengthen the stabilizer muscles on that left side here. I'm going to go to the other side. So if you're not quite ready to take the hands off the mat, you can still kind of do these in place here. This is still my bad side from when my sciatica was really bad, so I lost a lot of strength in my right leg that I'm still trying to rebuild. So my balance is not as good over here. From there, I'm going to go to my back. And again, keeping that belly button drawn in towards the spine. You can start with your hands kind of under your low back. You can also put a towel here. And I'm going to take an inhale. Exhale, I'm going to draw the low belly in, keep building pressure onto either my fingers or that towel. And then open and squeeze down. Open, squeeze down. So again, I do probably more than that, but just for the sake of the time on this video, I'm going to move forward. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extend my left leg. I'm going to take the right knee in and just some controlled circles, one direction and the other. You might avoid super deep flexion here if this causes you pain. I'm going to take those circles in each direction. Switch that out. I'm going to take that left ankle, hook it over the right knee, and clasp the fingers behind the right thigh, and I'm going to start to draw this in, draw the knee in towards my face. I don't want to do this where I'm crunching or taking my hips off the ground. So keep that low back flat to the ground, okay? And just squeeze that in, hold for, 10 seconds, 5 breaths, something like that. All right. I'm gonna switch to the other side. This was really, really difficult for me at the peak of my injury. This just felt awful, and I could really only do it for a little bit at a time, but it's much better now. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, just a couple more exercises here. I'm going to lay flat. I'm going to again take my fingers, clasp it behind this right leg now, and you don't need to go full extension. So I can fully extend my knee, or my leg, sorry, but you might just be here, okay? So we're going to do what's called like a nerve flossing technique, where you're going to just point and flex the foot, maybe no more than 6 or 7 times, all right? So you're letting that sciatic nerve kind of work its way through its range of motion there. If we extend the leg, then it's stretched, and when it's stretched, it can cause you to have a flare up, right? It's putting a lot of tension on that nerve. So again, when I first started doing these, I could not straighten my leg at all. I can now, but it took me a while to get there. So I'm gonna do both sides here. Just a point and flex. You can also do this sitting in a chair, and it works pretty well. Okay. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is just a glute bridge. So I'm going to bring the heels up so that my fingers can touch them. Okay, and draw that lower belly button in and lift. And either do this for time. Okay, I like to do just reps up and down with control. To make this more challenging, I'll sometimes put my feet up on like a stability ball. I'll put them on a couch. Just elevate the legs in a way that it's a little bit more challenging for the core and get a little bit more range of motion. Okay. The next type of hip bridge that I'll do is I'll take the knees wide, and when I do this, my feet are not glued together. They're still about hip width apart, and I'm going to lift. Hold. And lower with control. Again, you can do those for reps. You can do those for as much time as you need. The last thing that I'll do, and this one might be more challenging, it just depends on kind of where you're at, is I'll do a single leg bridge. So I'll pull one leg in and lift. Really focusing on driving that heel into the ground, getting good activation in the glute on that side. Also very good to do on a stability ball or just on an elevated plane. So there are some other things that I do, but I think for this video, that's what I'll include. The main things are that low back mobility. So doing that cobra will really, really help just loosen up whatever's tightened up in the low back. I found that was a game changer for me. And then doing the pigeon pose, right? The seated pigeon, or the reclined pigeon here. That one can be really good for just alleviating some pain if you're having a flare up. But for me, just in general, it was building up a lot of mobility in my hips, my low back, and building a lot of strength in like the inner thighs and glutes, and then gradually over time with some consistency, my pain went away. Hope you find it helpful. If you have questions about anything that I just did, just get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk about it.